You'll never amount to anything, Dad. Just leave." Those words hit me harder than the icy wind whipping through downtown Cedar Rapids that December morning. My son, Aaron, standing there in my own living room, had the audacity to spit them out like he was dismissing a fly buzzing around his head. I froze, coffee trembling in my hand, watching the smug expression on his face. My daughter, Claire, just rolled her eyes, arms crossed, clearly waiting for me to argue and fail. I didn't. Not yet. I let the insult sink in, sharp and bitter, because deep down, I already knew the battle ahead wasn't with them. It was with the system, with their arrogance, and with years of being underestimated. Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm 62 years old, a retired firefighter from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I've lived here my entire life, raised 2 children, paid my dues, and survived long enough to see the coldest part of people's hearts. Even my own family. I sacrificed vacations, weekends, and my personal happiness to provide them a roof, food on the table, and opportunities I never had. Yet now, standing in my own living room, I was being told I didn't matter. The irony wasn't lost on me. Just last month, I had co-signed their apartment lease, paid off a chunk of their student loans quietly, and even covered the car insurance when Aaron's old vehicle finally died. All unnoticed, all unappreciated. The house itself, a modest brick 2-story with a snow-dusted yard, stood as a monument to decades of hard work. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And now Aaron and Claire acted as if I didn't even exist. I stepped outside for air. The streets were quiet, the frost crunching under my boots. I thought of my late wife, Ellen, and how she would have handled this. With her, there was always calm strategy, never reckless emotion. I took a deep breath, letting the cold sting my cheeks, and realized she had left me not just a home, but a legacy, one they were too blind to see. I returned inside, determined. They might mock me, laugh at me, and exclude me from their plans, but I had patience. I had planning, and most importantly, I had the law, the truth, and years of evidence to quietly turn the tables. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table. Aaron sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "So what? You just expect me to take your word for everything you've ever done for me?" he said, not even looking up. "I'm not asking for your thanks, Aaron," I said, voice steady. "I'm asking for honesty, respect, recognition where it's due." "You'll see soon enough," Claire snorted. "Oh, this is rich. You think some law or whatever can change how we feel?" I smiled faintly. "Not how you feel, just what you're entitled to legally. That's all." They didn't laugh this time. There was a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes, but they quickly masked it. I spent the next few days quietly reviewing the apartment lease, the bank statements for loans I'd covered, and the property deeds for the house. Each document was a thread, and I intended to weave them into a net they couldn't escape. The local bank manager, who knew me for decades, gave me a nod when I walked in. "You've got everything in order, Mike," he said. "It's tight." They won't see it coming. A plan began to take shape, not out of anger, but out of necessity. My children had underestimated me, and I would correct that. Every payment, every overdue notice, every legal clause became a tool in my hands. Quietly, meticulously, I started lining things up. By the weekend, Aaron and Claire had invited friends over, bragging about holiday plans and pretending they had nothing to worry about. I watched from my armchair, invisible but present, letting them believe they were in control. They didn't realize that the true countdown had already begun. The house, the loans, the legal leverage, they were all pieces of a puzzle. And once the new year arrived, the first domino would fall. I sipped my coffee again, staring out the frost-covered window. The quiet hum of Cedar Rapids in winter settled around me, and for the first time in months, I felt a small, calm thrill. Justice wasn't loud. It was deliberate. And theirs was about to arrive, whether they liked it or not. You seriously think you can just waltz in here and control everything? Aaron barked the next morning, pacing the living room like a caged lion. Mom would never— Stop right there, I said firmly, my voice calm but cutting through the tension like a knife. Mom is gone, Aaron. And everything she left behind? That's my responsibility now, whether you like it or not. Claire scoffed, folding her arms. Responsibility? You mean taking credit for her stuff? Typical, Dad. I didn't rise to the bait. Instead, I leaned back in the chair, letting the silence grow, letting them stew in it. I had learned long ago that confrontation without preparation is just noise. But, when carefully timed, confrontation is power. The truth was, Ellen's will had been clear. She had left the house in my name, accounts split according to careful calculations, and specific instructions to ensure the children were provided for. But not at my expense. What Aaron and Claire hadn't anticipated was how meticulously I had kept track of every receipt, every mortgage payment, every loan I'd quietly covered. When they mocked me, laughed, and belittled, I wasn't just taking mental notes. I was building the evidence that would undo their smug confidence. You don't get it, do you? I said quietly, almost to myself. Everything you think is yours is built on my labor, my decisions, my risk. Aaron threw his hands up. Oh, spare me the heroic act, Dad. You've been bitter since Mom. I've been careful, I interrupted, voice steady. And careful beats bitter every time. Claire's smirk faltered. I could see it. The first crack in their armor. By midweek, I started contacting the bank, the law office handling Ellen's estate, and even the small-town assessor's office. Each call was innocuous. Routine questions about documents, verification of signatures, account balances. But all of it was a chess move. I wasn't doing this in anger. I was doing it because they had forced my hand. The law offices were a maze, but I knew the right people. Mr. Hanson, the estate lawyer who had worked with Ellen for over 20 years, was discreet but firm. Michael, he said, everything you've kept track of is exactly what you need. Your children might be shocked, but the paperwork is on your side. I smiled, feeling a quiet surge of validation. Finally, the advantage was mine. Back home, tensions escalated. Aaron started making passive-aggressive remarks about bills. Claire mocked my retirement planning, and the atmosphere thickened like winter fog. You really think you can outsmart us, Dad? Aaron snapped one evening, leaning across the kitchen counter. We've got connections. We can— You underestimate patience, I replied evenly. And patience, Aaron, is more dangerous than any connection. They exchanged glances, realizing that for the first time I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was calm, collected, and, most importantly, preparing. That weekend, I quietly visited the mortgage company, confirming every detail about the house's title. I reviewed property tax records, double-checked bank statements, and ensured every legal detail was airtight. The feeling of control settled in, a slow-burning satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. Evenings were spent compiling files, photographs, emails, evidence of how I had supported them, how I had invested in their futures, and how carelessly they assumed my labor and generosity would continue indefinitely. You're serious, aren't you? Claire finally whispered one night, almost to herself, overhearing me on a phone call with the lawyer. Deadly serious, I replied, a hint of steel in my voice. You think this is just a family spat? It's not. It's accountability. And come the new year, you'll understand what that really means. The suspense in the room was palpable. For the first time, the children weren't mocking me. They were unsure, anxious. That tiny seed of doubt was all I needed. The first domino would fall soon, quietly, surgically. The house, the accounts, the unpaid debts. They were all lined up. Aaron and Claire thought the new year would be just another celebration. another series of privileges handed to them. But I had already set the stage. I looked out the frost-coated windows of my living room that night, feeling the stillness of Cedar Rapids wrap around me. The streets were empty, the snow reflecting the soft glow of streetlights. My heartbeat was calm, deliberate, measured, and I knew, when the countdown began, it wouldn't be the ball dropping in Times Square that shocked anyone. It would be me. The house was mine, the law was mine, and the patience I had nurtured for decades was mine. Their arrogance had underestimated one thing. I wasn't bitter. I was prepared. And preparation, as they were about to learn, is far more dangerous than rage. The week after that, I began setting the pieces in motion. Every phone call, every signature, every verification was deliberate. I wasn't rushing. I was ensuring there would be no holes, no loopholes for Aaron or Claire to exploit. Patience was my weapon. It started with the bank. I requested a full statement of the accounts Ellen had left in trust. The clerk, unaware of the tension simmering under my calm exterior, handed over the documents. Page by page, I reviewed deposits, withdrawals, and payments. Everything matched my records. Every mortgage payment I'd secretly covered, every insurance premium I'd insured was up to date, every utility settled. I had documented it all. The next stop was the law office. Mr. Hanson was a quiet man with a sharp mind, the kind who'd known Ellen for over 2 decades. He greeted me with a small, knowing smile. "Michael," he said, "I've reviewed the will several times since Ellen passed. Legally, everything is perfectly clear. The children may be resistant, but the law is on your side." I nodded, letting the weight of that affirmation settle. It wasn't about victory yet. It was about preparation. At home, I noticed Aaron's restlessness. He had begun pacing the halls at odd hours, muttering under his breath, checking bills he had no business touching. Claire, on the other hand, was quieter but sharper, attempting to bait me with barbed comments about the estate, about my timid approach. "You think hiding behind lawyers and paperwork makes you smart, Dad?" Claire asked one evening, her voice light but icy. "We're family. This should be easy." I poured a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter. "Easy isn't the point, Claire. Accountability is, and you'll understand the difference soon enough." She paused, her eyes flicking toward the unopened letters from the bank sitting on the counter. I left them there intentionally. Every unopened envelope, every ignored call. It was part of the suspense. By midweek, I had arranged meetings with both the mortgage company and the county assessor. My goal was simple: verify beyond doubt that the house, the land, and every financial asset were secure under my name. At the mortgage office, the clerk frowned at me. "Sir, I have your account here, but are you sure you want to consolidate everything before the children see it?" I smiled, calm and unshakable. "Yes, please proceed." Later, at the county assessor's office, I confirmed property records. Every signature matched, every tax payment was accounted for, and the deeds were unassailable. I was building an impenetrable fortress around my assets. Back home, Aaron and Claire's arrogance began to falter. They had underestimated me. Aaron slumped into the living room one evening, muttering, "You're really doing this, aren't you?" "I am," I said softly, pouring myself a glass of water. "And you'll see why patience is far more dangerous than anger." He shook his head, his confidence waning. "I thought you were weak. I thought, Mom, that you'd just let us take over everything." "And that," I replied, "was your first mistake." I spent the following days quietly monitoring every detail. Every automatic payment, every check, every legal document. It was all synchronized. I made calls to the utility companies, confirming that nothing could be interrupted. I checked the safe deposit box, ensuring all vital documents were there. By now, the children's whispers had started. Quiet, unsure. Claire glanced at Aaron one night, a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Maybe Dad knows more than we think." Aaron gritted his teeth but didn't respond. The first hint of confrontation would come soon. The subtle, careful pressure I had applied was beginning to show. Their confidence, once brash and mocking, was cracking. And then the final piece fell into place. I had arranged for the lawyer to send a formal notice regarding the estate. It wasn't threatening, it wasn't aggressive, but it was precise, surgical, and undeniable. Aaron opened it first. He read the words, his face blanching. What? What does this mean? Claire peered over his shoulder, her smirk gone. That can't be right. I leaned in, voice calm, almost conversational. It is right. Every payment, every account, every asset, all accounted for. Every choice Ellen made and every bit of support I gave, documented. They had no retort. For the first time, silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. The countdown had begun. Not the countdown to a new year, but to the moment I revealed the truth. The moment the house, the accounts, and the estate, all theirs in assumption only, would become undeniable evidence of my careful, deliberate control. And when that day came, the smug smiles they had worn so arrogantly would vanish forever. The morning of the will reading, Cedar Creek felt colder than usual. The winter air bit at my cheeks as I stepped out of my car, clutching a small leather folder of documents I'd double-checked twice. Every step toward the law office felt like walking into the final act of a play I had rehearsed in my mind for weeks. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Aaron and Claire were already there, hovering near the front, whispering to each other with those arrogant, self-satisfied smiles. I could feel their confidence like a weight in the air, and for a moment, I let it rest on me. It was fuel. "You shouldn't even be here, Dad," Aaron sneered, voice dripping with contempt. "Mom's estate. It's none of your concern." I offered him a calm smile, as though speaking to a child. "It is my concern, Aaron, always has been. And now, it's about to be very clear who's been taking care of what." Claire rolled her eyes. "You don't get it, Dad. Everything's supposed to be ours. You've always been the forgotten parent." "Forgotten?" I echoed, tilting my head. "No, Claire, documented, accounted for, and, more importantly, earned," the lawyer, Mr. Hanson, called the room to order. Chairs scraped, papers shuffled, and I could see the anticipation building in the eyes of everyone present. "Before we begin," I added, lifting my voice just slightly so it carried. "Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe. And tell us where you're watching from." I allowed a small pause, the faintest smirk tugging at my lips. Aaron's jaw tightened. Claire's eyes narrowed. They had no idea what was coming. Mr. Hanson cleared his throat and began reading the will. My daughter's portions were generous, but the most shocking clause, the one they had all assumed would be irrelevant, was saved for last. "And finally," Mr. Hanson said, adjusting his glasses, "to Michael Langston, Ellen's husband, every remaining asset, including the house on Elm Street, all savings accounts, and any investments not specifically designated." I watched Aaron's smirk falter. His lips twitched as if trying to form a word, but nothing came out. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. That's not possible," she whispered, though everyone could hear her. "It is," Mr. Hanson confirmed, his voice steady. "Everything was accounted for, and every decision made legally and transparently. Mr. Langston, as the surviving spouse and executor, retains control of all remaining assets." A long, awkward silence filled the room. I could hear the faint rustle of paper as Aaron's hand shook slightly, gripping the back of his chair. Claire's knees knocked against each other. You can't do this," Aaron finally blurted, voice rising. "Mom would have wanted—" "She wanted fairness," I interrupted, calm but firm. "Fairness for those who actually maintained responsibility, not entitlement based on assumption or arrogance. The lawyer cleared his throat again. Everything is legally binding. There is no contest pending that could overturn these decisions. Aaron looked at me, disbelief and anger warring across his face. All those bills? The mortgage. You were paying them. I was, I said simply, allowing the weight of the truth to sink in. Everyone. Every month. While you mocked me for being useless, I ensured the home remained yours to live in, without interruption. But ownership, responsibility, was never transferred. That was never the agreement, and Ellen made it clear in her will. Claire's voice trembled now. We thought— You thought wrongly, I said, the calmness in my voice slicing through their shock. You assumed entitlement, not accountability. And today, accountability wins. Aaron's face reddened. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it, realizing there was nothing left to say. Claire's shoulders slumped, and I could see her internal struggle. Anger, guilt, disbelief, all churning behind her eyes. I rose slowly from my chair, holding the folder close to my chest. Ellen trusted me with everything, and I honored that trust. Not for glory, not for revenge, but for the sake of truth. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the heater and the distant murmur of traffic outside. I felt a rare sense of calm wash over me. This was justice, not the loud, messy kind, but the quiet, undeniable kind. Aaron slumped in his chair, muttering, We never saw it coming." "You never do," I said, voice softening but resolute, "until someone takes the time to actually understand the responsibility that comes with privilege." As I left the office, snow beginning to dust the streets of Cedar Creek, I noticed Aaron and Claire standing in the doorway, staring after me. The arrogance had vanished. All that remained was the bitter realization that control had never been theirs, and never would be. For the first time in months, I allowed myself a small, private smile. The house, the assets, and more importantly, my dignity, were intact. And Aaron and Claire had finally learned the lesson that comes with underestimating someone who has quietly, carefully, and deliberately planned every move. But one thought lingered, bittersweet. Justice was served, yet their resentment could fester. I'd done my part. Now it was time to step back and let truth stand on its own. The silence of victory was sweeter than any shouted triumph. The weeks after the will reading were quiet, almost eerily so. Cedar Creek seemed to notice the shift. The once confident glances of Aaron and Claire now carried hesitation. They no longer held the smug certainty of entitlement. Instead, their eyes darted when I passed, and their voices dropped an octave when speaking to anyone who might know the truth. I returned to the Elm Street house, the snow crunching under my boots, and allowed myself a moment to breathe. The place had been my sanctuary for months, my fortress of patience and planning. Every corner of that home told the story of sacrifice, the nights balancing bills, the weekends repairing a leaky roof, the mornings brewing coffee while contemplating the looming legal battle. This house was mine in more ways than the deed could show. It was mine because I had preserved it when no one else cared to. Aaron tried subtle resistance at first. He stopped by one afternoon, pretending to be casual. "Dad, maybe we can work something out. Maybe you could sell part of the house to us?" His voice was tight, faltering under the weight of embarrassment. I studied him, my hands folded across my chest. "Work something out?" I echoed. "Aaron, do you understand that every payment you missed, every time you mocked me for being useless, only strengthened my resolve? The house isn't for sale. Not to you. Not to anyone who mistakes entitlement for ownership." His shoulders slumped, and he knew he'd lost. Claire never tried to negotiate. I saw her only from the corner of my eye, at the town diner one morning, staring at me with a mix of resentment and disbelief. She didn't approach. There was nothing to say. The truth spread quietly. almost as if the town itself had decided to remind everyone that actions have consequences. At the bank, the manager nodded knowingly when I came in to handle a transfer, his subtle glance saying, "Well done." At the grocery store, Mrs. Thompson from 2 streets over whispered, "You did what was right." And in every encounter, I felt the slow shift of respect replacing whispered doubts. Then came the final, poetic stroke. Aaron, in an attempt to save face, had attempted to assert minor control over a small trust fund Ellen had set up for family emergencies. He filed a frivolous motion, hoping to challenge my authority as executor. I didn't panic. I didn't shout. I sat with my lawyer, Mr. Hanson, reviewing the documents, and calmly prepared the response. "Every signature is authentic. Every decision documented," I told him. "This is a waste of their time. Let the court see who truly handles responsibility." And that's exactly what happened. The hearing was brief. Aaron's voice faltered under cross-examination. Claire didn't appear. Her attempt at rebellion quietly evaporated when she realized the futility. The judge, a sharp woman from Des Moines, looked at Aaron with measured eyes. "Mr. Langston," she said, voice echoing in the small courtroom, "it's clear that you've managed this estate with diligence, transparency, and respect for the decedent's intentions. Any claims otherwise are without merit. The court upholds your authority as executor, and any motion to the contrary is dismissed." I let the words sink in, feeling the weight lift. Aaron's face was pale, his bravado completely gone. Claire would have to live with the knowledge that all her plans, all her manipulations, had failed. And I finally had peace. That evening, I sat on the front porch of Elm Street House, watching the sun dip behind the distant hills of Cedar Creek. The snow reflected the fading light, and the world felt at once quiet and full. I breathed in deeply, the scent of pine and winter air filling my lungs, and realized the truth. Dignity isn't given. It's earned through patience, endurance, and the courage to act when the moment comes. The house was mine. My name was clear in every legal document, every account statement, every deed. But more importantly, my dignity, my quiet triumph over arrogance, was intact. I didn't need them to acknowledge it. I didn't need applause. The knowledge, the calm certainty, was enough. From inside the house, the faint sound of a Christmas carol drifted through the open window. I smiled softly. I didn't need to be invited this year. The house, the warmth, the peace. This was my celebration. And as the lights glimmered on the porch, reflecting off the snow, I knew something else. Sometimes justice isn't loud, but it is undeniable. Aaron and Claire would eventually realize that their assumptions had been their undoing. They had tried to cut me out, to diminish me, to rewrite the rules of responsibility. But life, with its quiet fairness, had ensured they learned the hardest lesson. Entitlement never beats accountability. I sipped my coffee, cold now, but comforting, and let the silence of victory settle over me. The past months of anxiety, doubt, and quiet plotting had led to this moment, and I felt, for the first time in a long while, entirely at peace. Ellen had trusted me with everything, and I had honored that trust. More than money, more than property, honor, respect, dignity. Cedar Creek's winter night fell completely, blanketing the town in quiet snow, and I knew the battle was over. I had won, not with rage, not with shouting, but with steady hands, a calm heart, and unyielding patience. The lesson remained. Never underestimate the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who act not in anger but in measured justice. I smiled, feeling warmth in the cold night. This was poetic justice at its finest. Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.